Good evening. This is a meeting of the Athens Board of Zoning Appeals. The time is 7:02 p.m. and the date is August 13th, 2024. At this time, I'll call the meeting to order. First order of business, though, is to watch a video about the rules of the Board of Zoning Appeals as dictated by the state. So this overview will provide some details there.
The Athens Board of Zoning Appeals operates according under the following procedure. The chair will name and describe the case. The zoning administrator or secretary will state the basis of the objection and any applicable facts or conditions pertaining to the case. The appellant or their representative will give reason why the appeal should be viewed favorably. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request will be heard. Anyone wishing to speak in general comment will be heard. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition will be heard. If necessary, the appellant or their representative will offer concluding summary or rebuttal remarks. Testimony from the floor shall be closed. The board will deliberate and render a decision. According to Athens City Code Section 23-07-03B, the board has power to grant variances from the strict application of the code, provided the variance will not be contrary to the public interest. The spirit of the code is observed, public safety and welfare are secured, and substantial justice is done. According to Athens City Code Section 23-07-10C, variances from the code shall not be granted unless the board makes specific findings of fact based directly on the particular evidence presented to it, that the standards and conditions imposed in this title, if applicable, have been met by the applicant. Exceptional circumstances. There are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that does not apply generally to other properties or classes or uses in the same zone. Practical difficulty and undue hardship. Because of exceptional or extraordinary conditions pertaining to the specific piece of property, a literal enforcement of these regulations will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary to the achievement of public purposes. Preservation of equal property rights. Literal interpretation of these regulations would deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone and the same vicinity, while a granting of the requested variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied to other properties in the same zone and the same vicinity. Minimum variance. The variance granted is the minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property. Absence of detriment. The authorizing of such variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property and will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning code or the public interest. Not a general nature. The condition or situation of the specific piece of property or the intended use of said property for which variance is sought, one or the other or in a combination, is not of so general or recurrent a nature as to make reasonably practicable the formulation of a general regulation for such condition or situation. Any person, resident, or officer, department, or appointed body of the City of Athens, aggrieved by a decision of the board, may petition the Athens County Court of Common Pleas concerning the illegality of the decision. Such petition must be filed within 30 days after the mailing of the decision of the board to the applicant.
All right, so the board tonight currently consists of, well, the board in general consists of 5 members and 2 alternates. We have 1 voting member not here tonight. The alternates take part in the full discussion, and if there's a voting member missing, which we have 1 missing tonight, one of them will become a voting member or when somebody abstains for a conflict of interest, and actually the one member had said that he has a conflict and that's the reason he's not here tonight. Members present tonight are Ben Lockman, Aaron Thomas, Kelly Sauber, and alternates Alicia Sweeney and Paul Isherwood. I'm Rob Delich, Chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Also present and representing the city are Zoning Administrator Mr. David Riggs. There's one case before us tonight, 3 Patton Street. The board is required to take testimony under oath. Would anyone wishing to speak tonight concerning any item on the agenda please stand? Do you swear or affirm that any testimony you will present to the board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You may be seated. So, Mr. Riggs, will you provide us with an overview of the case?
Yeah, this is case number 2409, 3 Patton Street. It's an R1 zone, and they're requesting a short-term rental that is non-owner occupied. Owner-occupied short-term rentals are permitted in an R1 zone, and as a conditional use, some non-owner occupied short-term rentals are permitted, but they don't. This particular one doesn't fall into any of those cases of the conditional use. So this is a non-permitted use in an R1 zone.
Would have been the quickest briefing yet. Anyone have questions for Mr. Riggs about this case?
Can you explain what the condition, like the scenarios where the conditions would be?
Sure, yeah. Conditionally permitted uses in an R1 zone, this would be ACC 230401C, allow short-term rentals, non-owner occupied short-term rentals on R1 lots that abut an R2, R3, or any B zone, or any principal home that fronts on East State Street, Carpenter Street, Lancaster Street, or Columbus Road. Those are the conditional approvals for a non-owner occupied short-term rental.
And that's part of the new law from past, 3 years ago now?
Couple, yeah,
Yeah.
2 or 3 years
It's not
ago,
too new, but
3 years ago. 3 to 4 years ago,
yeah,
I'd say.
yeah.
All right, anyone else has questions for Mr. Riggs? All right, so at this time, I'd like to invite the appellant or their representative to approach the podium and provide pertinent testimony or reasons why the request should be viewed favorably by the board.
Okay. My name is Cindy Perry. I inherited this home on 3 Patton Street from my aunt. She's owned it since 1997. This occurred in March of this year. So we started, my husband and my daughter, who's also with me, started renovating the home. So we pretty much have it fully renovated with a contractor. What we were doing, what we would like to do, my daughter just started working for the Athens Police Department, so she's been utilizing the home and she's been renovating it. But we would also like to have family use the home. So family was able to use the home. So we've had family from Georgia, New York, but then there's other families that would like to use this home as well. And the reason why is because it has 3 bedrooms. It has a full bath upstairs with the 3 bedrooms, has a living room, kitchen, dining area downstairs with a half bath. It's suited for 3 individuals. So if it's 3 adults and their related children, would work perfect in that house. We also did a driveway permit. So I did that shortly after I obtained the house in March, and that was approved. So we do have 4 parking spots that's from access to an alleyway in the back right behind Kindred Market. So pretty much with the size of the home and how it's been utilized, it's been working really well. So I feel that having other families to be able to use the home would be the best situation. But that's why I'm here today, to see what you have to say. And I want to mention too that I did speak with all the adjoining property owners, and they approved it as well. I had signatures too from them.
Yeah, they are in our packet, or at least some of them are. I think there is at least 3 that I saw.
It should be 4.
Therefore, yeah, we're just missing Lori Williams as an
I
adjoining
did talk,
property.
but I spoke with all of them.
Okay.
The one that did not provide it, I did speak with her. She said I'm not of any concern with any of this right now. She has other stuff that she was dealing with. So I tried to meet with, I talked with her a few times, and she said she didn't have any issues.
All right. Anything else for us?
Yeah, I don't know, David Riggs, he was talking earlier about the 2 different ones with the conditional. It is adjoining in the B zone. So does that allow?
Yeah, so
for-
the way that that's set up is that there's actually a road in between the two, and the way
Right away.
the way that the zoning map is, it's not, we don't consider that adjacent, so it's
Oh,
not
okay.
conditional, yeah.
All right. Okay, very good.
And is it on a double lot? I drove by today.
No, it's by itself, but the lot beside it's empty.
Okay,
Larry Young owns that lot.
gotcha.
So he's the owner of Kindred
And
and
he's the
the
owner of
apartments
Kindred
next door to
Market.
Kindred.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Kurt Monell's, yeah, and he has apartments, you're right behind the property is apartments. And then Kurt Monell has apartments right beside him.
Thanks.
Anyone else with questions for the appellant?
No? Because we just looked at that area with Monto's remodel. Back to the ADA approval for the first floor for that location. It's a busy area.
Okay, I guess you can go ahead and take a seat since we don't seem to have any more questions for you at this point, and we'll just see if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the request that would like to make a statement. And you should swear in, so I don't think you swore in before, so do you swear or affirm that any testimony you will present to the board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. My name is Caitlin Perry. Cindy's my mother. We inherited the house, like she said, this March. We've been working on it. It's such a wonderful home. It was built in 1936. I've really enjoyed remodeling it and building it, and it's just the perfect place. Just imagine families enjoying it, coming in to stay for a weekend to visit family in Athens or for certain weekends. Like, that's why we want to do the short-term rental, obviously not a full year-long rental type of situation. We want to be able to enjoy it. We want our families to enjoy it. We've spoken with the neighbors. They want their families to enjoy it so that they don't have to have them with them as well. So it's just, I think it'd be really beneficial all around. And it's a great location with Kindred Market right there, close to uptown. I just think it'd be really beneficial.
Yeah, it's a great location. Okay, anyone wishing to speak in general comment? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Just to check the boxes. So I'm closing the floor, and we'll now deliberate. We can still bring the appellant back if we find we have a question or something. We can, of course, ask Mr. Riggs things too here if we need to. So any initial discussion before we dive into the questions?
We saw a similar case last year with this East State.
Yeah, I was on East State where it was a conditional use, right?
Yep.
That was a,
Right across the street from.
that was an interesting case.
Yes, but it's right over from what we're looking at.
Not far away.
In
Same.
that case, it was not granted, is that correct?
It was
It was
denied.
not granted. That was a
Twice,
conditional
actually.
use.
Yes.
Because it was on State Street, so it was the criteria Mr. Riggs talked about earlier. So it qualified for review as a conditional use, and that's something that City Council, when they passed the legislation restricting or regulating, I guess is the way to put it, short-term rentals and allowing them, because they were not allowed before at all. So it allowed them, but it restricted them, and one of the compromises was to allow along the arterial corridors in the city for allowing owner non-occupied, in other words, whole house Airbnb rentals, but at the discretion of the board. And the board chose not to grant that conditional use.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Rick, but it's a permit versus a variance in this case, right? It's a conditional use permit was last year's case, and this is actually a variance.
This is actually a variance, that's correct, yeah.
So this is different. It is a variance from essentially the law City Council passed 3 or 4 years ago.
And it stays with the address. So
It-
even if the
it doesn't
property
meet
is
the
sold,
criteria
it will
for
stay with the
conditional.
address.
Yeah.
Is ultimately.
Which is that's where you gotta know the streets, like you mentioned, the certain
Yeah.
streets, because each property will vary on where it's located at, as far as if it's gonna fit into the criteria.
Yeah.
So it's on East State, it's off East State, it's on Carpenter, it's on the side street. We run two different perspectives when it come up to the short-term rental usage. And that's something, we dealt with that for years and years, and they finally came up with something 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Because it was absolutely not happening 4 years ago, no matter what the situation was. Just some backstory.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
All right, so first question is, are there exceptional circumstances in this case? We're a quiet bunch tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
I have a hard time. This, I think this is a difficult one because I definitely see the demand for, people coming into town and needing short-term rentals, but on the other hand, the code's pretty clear on this, and this doesn't feel exceptional. I've, had my own friends and family like looking for Airbnbs or, short-term rentals in Athens, and it's not easy to find, but on the other hand, yeah, I have a hard time saying this is exceptional in any particular way.
I do think that the property does align with the intent of the conditional use permit because it's like basically abutting a B district, but it's not because of the alleyway. So I could see like that as potentially a unique use or a unique case, but we would still have to consider that as a conditional use permit. Like
Yeah.
viewing it as a conditional use permit when we're granting it.
I think that falls within our mandate to,
Yeah.
to follow the spirit of the code as
Yeah.
opposed to the letter of it at times. Yeah, I mean, right, if the alley weren't there, it would be, Director Riggs, if the alley weren't there, it would be considered,
It actually depends on how the zoning map is shown. So the way we consider it that the public right-of-way is actually a separate lot or plot.
Right.
And so if the adjacent property is a business zone and the alley or the right-of-way is zoned residential, then that's the parcel that's adjacent, and so the other parcel is not. It's hard to describe that. I'm trying to give you a visual there, but
I think my point is just that if that right-of-way were not there, it would qualify as
yes,
conditional use.
That's correct,
Okay.
yeah.
Would they have been able to have the additional parking necessary at that point, though, without the alley?
Without the alley?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to look and see. I don't know the answer to that.
The parking currently does go off the alley.
Right.
But if without the alley, I don't know if they
Yeah.
can still get it.
Right.
All right, anyone else comments on exceptional circumstances for this case? Is there practical difficulty and undue hardship?
we look at one of these like every month now, so it's kind of, it's every case is different, but it's still the same.
It's still the same. We want to do a non-owner occupied,
Yeah, right.
and it's not
So-
legal, so can we do it?
Yeah.
What
it's-
makes it exceptional would be the question at that point.
So I guess one of the things here would be, if this isn't allowed, what else can this property be used for? Is it really, is this a use we're granting because there is no other good use for it? It could be used as a long-term rental. I presume they could get a rental permit for it. They've done renovations, so I assume it'd be up to code to do that. So it could be a long-term rental. It could be used as a residence, or owner-occupied residence,
Or an owner-occupied Airbnb.
or an owner-occupied Airbnb.
Which is, few of them around there, but it's usually the house up front is owner occupied and the garage is usually the Airbnb.
But you could even, within a house, Airbnb a room or two.
Yeah.
So that's
Or a
certainly possible.
floor, or what have you.
Yeah, right. I mean, ideally, that's maybe a separate entrance for it, but it doesn't have to be, actually. There's plenty of Airbnbs out there that are room rentals. So it still could be short-term rental as owner-occupied. So I don't think there's much practical difficulty or hardship.
Yeah, I think also that, we have a housing commission that is particularly interested in increasing the housing stock for permanent residents or long-term renters in Athens, and unfortunately, short-term rental doesn't tend to do that. So there's definitely a market for that. So they could be sold,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, there's a market for short-term rentals there, but there's, I think, a bigger problem in the city right now.
For long-term.
Like you just described, every council meeting, I was just at council last night, a lot of discussion about the housing shortage in the city. And it's almost every council meeting now it comes up. It's an issue that the city is,
I would assume that's
feeling
part of the
hard.
reason why the city, one of the motivations for passing the law was to reduce the turning of second-owned properties into short-term rentals.
Yeah.
right?
It takes them out of circulation
Yeah.
from a
Yes.
It
long,
does. And it
permanent
was
rent.
allowing owner-occupied with a little bit of owner-not-occupied option.
Yeah.
Right? It was a compromise too. So originally, there had been a stipulation where if you lived nearby, you could, so if you own a property within 250 feet, you could be considered owner-occupied and rent a whole property if you own one nearby your house. That was removed and what was done instead was the arterial conditional use instead of that.
Section C, basically.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody else ran into Joni Kornetsky on the way in, but
No.
she was standing outside.
Yeah, I saw her.
She was on her way somewhere, but she, specifically mentioned this, like
She knew about this case?
this case in the code and was, dissenting opinion. I don't really know how that plays into this. She
I think
didn't bother to come.
she dissented about everything. But
Yeah.
she was a member of this board.
Yeah, she was a member when we was dealing with this before.
Right. But she also,
Yeah.
didn't come to the meeting and actually, aired that opinion. So,
Chose not to. All right, preservation of equal property rights. So there are rentals nearby, and I think the appellant pointed that out in the document.
A lot of rentals.
There's a bunch of rentals at Kindred, there's a bunch upstairs there, there's also next door, there's a house that's
Yep.
rented, and then the garage behind it, I think, has a
Yes.
apartment above it. So there's a couple
Those
units
always
there.
long-term?
But all those are
Those are all
long-term.
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 The property,
As far as I know, I guess it's possible Kindred could maybe, the owner of the Kindred building could rent out some of those apartments upstairs as short-term rentals.
but those been
I'm not
long-term
aware of
forever
that.
though.
But
Been-
this doesn't deny them the right to use it as a long-term rental, so it's not, we're not comparing the same thing.
And it doesn't disallow them from using it as an owner-occupied short-term rental either. That would still be legit for them
That
on
is
this
right.
property.
And then the Montauk property, which, by the way, just had an open house today. I think you mentioned that here. Somebody mentioned it.
Yeah, they had, they can't get a variance for that, so they can have apartments on the first floor. But all those was long-term rentals and ADA compliant apartments.
Yeah, they came before us and.
Yes, 'cause they
got
need to put
approval
apartments
for
on the
8
first.
apartments.
Yeah.
They ended up building 6,
Yeah.
what I just heard, so. So we don't know of any short-term rentals nearby, right?
The last one that came in front of us was last summer.
Denied.
It's
Yes.
269, I believe, in
Yeah.
the state. Yeah.
There's other short-term rental in the area is actually right next door to that house.
That's owner occupied?
And it's owner occupied.
Oh,
Yeah,
I forget what number it is, but it's.
yeah, that came up in the
Directly to
meeting.
the left of.
oh, right,
the
right.
house.
Yeah.
They came before us and asked for a variance for that, so.
Yeah.
That was for essentially a rental.
Yeah. And that was like 2 years ago.
And that's on East State Street in the
Yes.
conditional use area, but since it was owner occupied, that wasn't an
That's
issue.
correct.
Okay, yeah, I almost forgot about that, right?
Yep.
So that is the one nearby, but
It's a
it's
busy
owner
area.
occupied, yeah. Minimum variance. Variance granted is a minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property. I think it's yes or no. It's not there's no, it's all or nothing. I think so. I guess you could say it's minimum, but either that or the question doesn't really apply here, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is the minimum variance for the requested use.
Absence of detriment.
4 of 5 neighbors signed off.
It's true. So that is the immediate neighbors.
Yes, 6 was the only one adjacent that did not sign off. 6 Patton.
It does say, the way this is worded, let me read it, the authorizing of such variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property and will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning code or the public interest. And that's where I think maybe the public interest, there is some potential detriment here, as we just discussed. There is a housing shortage in the city.
Right.
And taking other property off the market. Even if it's a single-family rental, long-term rental, it's housing stock.
That's actually a really important type that's not super available in the state.
And it is in short supply. This property being far enough from campus probably would be a possible short-term, or, sorry, long-term, single-family residence potentially, rental. Any other comments?
Nah, I mean, it's just, this is one of the things that we've been hearing for a long time, and it's, 3 years ago, we got better, they even started allowing it, but it's still, all the restrictions that's in there for, even for that area, and that's what we gotta look at.
And it was written relatively recently.
Yeah,
Yeah, so then, last question is not of a general nature. So I think in this case, there's actually legislation that was passed recently that addresses this issue, so I don't think this is of general nature.
Well, you'd also potentially, the problem is if you start saying, well, we're going to grant non-owner occupied short-term rentals outside of what was approved by city council, the next time you get a case, and you're pretty creating a precedent where you'd have to say,
We technically,
I mean, not
there's-
technically a precedent.
we're
but-
technically not setting a precedent, but we have to keep those things in mind, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I would actually say, I think this, unfortunately is of a very general nature. It's like every house in R1 that wants to do non-owner occupied short-term rental is, very similar to this.
Right.
The thing that is maybe, exceptional about this, as Alicia pointed out, is the
It's very close.
it's
location.
almost, it was, close to where you could have a conditional use. We would still have to evaluate that, as to the kind of, positive, qualities, just like we have with other, conditional use permits. So it wouldn't be a shoe-in necessarily, even in that scenario.
and then the variance would stay with the house too, so if the house is sold, then that variance
That's true.
stays with it too.
Also something to keep in mind.
Director Riggs, do conditional use, does it stay with the house once it's sold? I forget.
Yeah, it goes with the
The-
property and not
the
with the
address.
owner.
Yeah.
All right, would someone from the board like to propose a motion?
I'd like to make a motion requesting a variance from ACC 23.04.01 B6 to allow a non-owner occupied short-term rental in R1 zone for 3 Patton Street.
All right, here a second.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion before we take a vote?
I know I'm not voting, but just to clarify, was the motion to approve or deny?
Approve.
It's to approve.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's always to approve. All right, hearing no other discussion, all in,
Did we say Alicia or?
Alicia.
Paul is
Paul's
voting.
voting?
Yeah.
Paul is voting.
Okay.
But she participated in the discussion, just as
Yes.
she's allowed to do.
Great. She wanted to.
So all in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. Any opposed? So the nays have it, so this variance has not been granted. Okay. So other business, we have minutes from July 9th, 2023. The members present at that meeting, the minutes were in the package, so hopefully everybody got a chance to look at them.
Yep.
Members present were Kelly, Alicia, myself, Aaron, and Paul.
Yes.
So would somebody like to make a motion
I'd
to
like to make a
approve
motion to
these
approve the minutes.
Seconded.
minutes? All right, seconded. All those in favor? All right. Okay, that concludes our business for the day.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.